In 1937, the Nazi Party held an exhibition in Munich showcasing what they called degenerate art. On display were works of modern art deemed indecipherable, distorted, or depraved. That's Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, taking a tour of the degenerate art exhibition. Ironically, Goebbels himself was an avid modern art collector. But no matter. The Nazis were on a quest to purify German culture, and they would do it by removing any communist, foreign, or Jewish influences in the German art world and replacing them with realistically rendered, racially pure, Aryan art that exalted German values and the blood and soil ideology that the Nazis championed. To accomplish this feat, they drew on ancient Greek and medieval art styles, which Hitler believed to be uncontaminated by Jewish influence. Though the Nazi regime has thankfully been destroyed, their ideology lives on in the modern far right, who often use the imagery of ancient Greek and Roman statuary to promote their supposed moral, racial, and aesthetic superiority. Which brings us to PragerU. Now, far be it from me to call PragerU fascist, but I think you'll see there are some striking similarities between what the Nazis believed about art and what PragerU is promoting in their 2014 masterpiece entitled, "Why is Modern Art So Bad?"
For a score of centuries, artists enriched Western society with their works of astonishing beauty. The Night Watch, The Thinker, the Rocky Mountains. Master after master, from Leonardo to Rembrandt to Bierstadt, produced works that inspired, uplifted, and deepened us. But something happened on the way to the 20th century. The profound, the inspiring, and the beautiful were replaced by the new, the different, and the ugly.
Now, I want to note that profound, inspiring, and beautiful are all subjective words. PragerU is trying to build a case here that the worth of art can be objectively measured, but they're doing it on the basis of completely subjective metrics. Like, honestly, what about this is objectively profound, inspiring, or beautiful? What if I find this more profound, inspiring, or beautiful? Now, you can totally disagree with me there, but that's my point. Art is entirely subjective. But I think you'll start to see that what PragerU is championing as objective standards for good art is simply their own personal standards for art.
Today, the silly, the pointless, and the purely offensive are held up as the best of modern art.
Again, all completely subjective words.
How did the 1,000-year ascent towards artistic perfection and excellence die out? It didn't. It was pushed out. Beginning in the late 19th century, a group dubbed the Impressionists rebelled against the French Académie des Beaux-Arts and its demand for classical standards. Whatever their intentions, the new modernists sowed the seeds of aesthetic relativism, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder mentality. Today, everybody loves the Impressionists. And as with most revolutions, the first generation or so produced work of genuine merit. Monet, Renoir, and Degas still maintained elements of disciplined design and execution.
This is so funny because that's exactly what the Nazis did, except they drew the line a little earlier in the history of art. Classical, medieval, Renaissance art, that's Jew-free. Reich stamp of approval for that one, dude. Impressionism, on the other hand, clearly a sign of a diseased visual cortex. And now that time has passed and that style of art is no longer contentious, PragerU sees Impressionism as a totally worthwhile and valid form of art. But everything after that is just garbage and not worth looking at. Our standards of art are objective, by the way. Like, this whole take is the same thing as those cornballs who were like, dude, I was born in the wrong generation. Music was better back in the 70s. It's like, okay, dude, do you really think that's not what people are going to be saying in another 40 years when we only remember the good stuff? From Impressionism to rock music, we see a similar pattern emerge. Art in its day is derided for being trashy, offensive, and worthless. But over time, the cream rises to the top and comes to define the era.
Monet, Renoir, and Degas still maintained elements of disciplined design and execution. But with each new generation, standards declined until there were no standards.
Oh man, that's a classic PragerU chart right there, dude. How can you see that chart with one of the axes not even labeled. No source, no citation, and just like not immediately clock this video as a complete propaganda piece.
How can art be objectively measured unchallenged? In responding, I simply point to the artistic results produced by universal standards compared to what is produced by relativism. The former gave the world the birth of Venus and the dying Gaul, while the latter has given us the Holy Virgin Mary, fashioned with cow dung and pornographic images, and Petra, the prize-winning sculpture of a policewoman squatting and urinating.
All right, let's address the elephant in the room. Does this look better than this? I think from an aesthetic standpoint, most people would agree, yeah, the marble sculpture takes the cake. And I would even go so far as to say that maybe there are objectively determinable standards for aesthetics. Combinations of certain patterns, colors, and textures are more or less appealing to the human eye. But aesthetics is only one component of art. And this narrative PragerU is trying to create about art as a strict process.
The 1,000-year ascent towards artistic perfection,
refined generation over generation, is just like not true. I mean, it's not like our society is somehow no longer capable of cranking out marble busts and landscape paintings. But if I was after perfection, I'd just look at a picture or like one of those weirdly hyper-realistic close-up drawings of an eye. But that's the thing. Not only is art subjective, it's interpretive. And I think you could even argue this is a potential point of superiority that modern art has over classical art. For example, this is a sculpture of a biblical scene. There's not really much I can do besides admire its beauty, which I do. But beauty, as they say, is common. This, on the other hand, while it may not be so easy on the eyes, actually offers much more to my mind, in my opinion. For example, what made the artist choose this medium? What does my instinctive revulsion to a painting made out of dung say about me and my culture? And maybe if PragerU thought about that instead of going, ew, it's made out of poop, dude, maybe they'd have a little more appreciation for the arts.
Hey, Caesar, may I present to you the Senate's newest art piece? Stravo, this is not profound, beautiful, or inspiring. This is profane. Hey, whoa, this is Christian art. It's all the rage now. This is not art. This is a picture of a guy getting tortured to death. Where have the standards gone?
Without aesthetic standards, we have no way to determine quality or inferiority.
Yeah, it's almost like art isn't a competition. Why is putting art into a hierarchy something we need to do?
Here's a test I give my graduate students. Please analyze this Jackson Pollock painting and explain why it is good. It is only after they give very eloquent answers that I inform them that the painting is actually a close-up of my studio apron.
Oh, classic, dude. Yeah, everyone's heard the apocryphal story of someone leaving like their coat or their skateboard in a modern art gallery, and then everyone begins to crowd around it and treat it like it's the art. I mean, how stupid. This proves modern art is worthless, right? Actually, I would argue this is a beautiful thing about modern art. It can challenge our idea of what art even is. And if art can expand your perception to the point where you can view mundane or even trashy objects as art, I would say that's the greatest effect any artist could hope to achieve. But this idea of finding beauty in all things is abhorrent to fascism and conservative ideology more broadly. In order to uphold the hierarchy that their ideas promote, they need to maintain a clear distinction between the pure and the profane, the Aryan and the degenerate.
And who will determine quality is another challenge I'm given. If we are to be intellectually honest, we all know of situations where professional expertise is acknowledged and depended upon. Take figure skating in the Olympics, where artistic excellence is judged by experts in the field.
Yeah, man, figure skating is competition. Art isn't. Does this guy really think I'm going to sub out my standards and my taste to some board of artistic experts who determine what's good art? Does he really think I'm that much of a sheep? I thought conservative ideology was about freedom.
Many of today's artists merely use their art to make statements, often for nothing more than shock value.
Does PragerU really think that all artists throughout history were just good little angels? And then one day in the 20th century they said, ooh, let's be bad. Michelangelo is the Last Judgment. which I have no doubt will be held up as profound, inspiring, and beautiful by Prager U, was actually very controversial in its day for portraying Jesus beardless, not to mention the gratuitous nudity.
Artists of the past also made statements at times, but never at the expense of the visual excellence of their work.
Okay, so they don't believe that. Artists did make statements, but of course they did it the right way. That's what you have to understand. They did it the right way. It's gone too far this time.
It's not only artists who are at fault. It is equally the fault of the so-called art community, the museum heads, gallery owners, and the critics who encourage and financially enable the production of this rubbish.
I mean, there is genuinely something to be said here for the way that art becomes beholden to the market. Heck, I'm no fan of NFTs either, but I will say this is not a new phenomenon. In the Middle Ages, most artists survived by doing commissioned works for nobles or religious institutions. But oddly, now that the type of art that is commercially viable is the sort that Prager U doesn't like, the market is wrong. The people need to rise up and take back the means of art production from the blood-sucking, owning class that controls the galleries, the press, and the auction houses, and allow the people to determine how art is made and where it is hung. But of course, Prager U can't go that far, because it might upset the oil billionaires that fund them. So they're relegated to boring solutions, pester your school board to indoctrinate your kid, and vote with your dollar. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind next time I got $1 million burning a hole in my pocket at an auction house. Hey man, we're all going down to the art gallery later to buy Basquiat paintings. You in? Or you a square?
No thanks. I stay away from that stuff, 'cause it's whack. Stay in school, kids.
You know, I noticed that Prager U never actually answers the question that their own video poses. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up where they left off and offer 3 possible reasons why our friends at the U are having such a tough time appreciating modern art. First of all, art often challenges the status quo that conservatism, by its very nature, seeks to preserve. Second, art transcends the arbitrary boundaries of class, race, and gender that the right always upholds in one form or another. It challenges the fascist mindset that seeks to order the world, fit it into black and white boxes, and deem things Aryan or degenerate. Third, art asks us to exercise empathy, considering the perspectives and experiences of others, even people we would rather not see as human. Art allows us to think emotionally and subjectively, something the right is not exactly famous for.
Forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings.
Because of this, conservatives tend to champion sterile, watered-down forms of art that don't challenge the status quo and strictly portray an idealized version of reality. So to get back to the question at hand, why is modern art so bad? I think the answer is that for someone with a conservative mindset, contemporary art will always be bad. It's a question the Nazis were asking 100 years ago, and it's a question that conservatives may be doomed to ask forever, hating the present, scared for the future, and longing for a past that never really existed. Sounds pretty miserable if you ask me. Hi, if you watch this far, you either fell asleep at your computer or you're a true believer. If you want to see some more degenerate art by yours truly, check out my Instagram. And if you want to join the community, hop on the Discord. Link is in the description.